Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then we're good. This is for the people in the room. That's for the people at the end.
Oh.
Plenty of seats up here. Yeah, there is. Right here. Come on, we're all adults. Y'all should be caffeinated at this point.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. You are definitely part of what makes Social Media Breakfast great. Our focus as Social Media Breakfast is education, learning about social media, digital marketing, through presentations, panel discussions, audits, case studies, and more. Networking, we bring together great people like you this morning, marketers, PR professionals, students, entrepreneurs, and social media enthusiasts over a cup of coffee. Free coffee. When we meet, it's the third Wednesday morning of each month. We're consistent with that, and we love to see you here. So thanks again. Where we meet? Dream Bank, this lovely Dream Bank location. And it's a great welcoming space. It's open to the public if you have events. It's definitely a great avenue for those as well. We have a board of all of these fabulous people. Many of them are here this morning. If you look around the room, you may see a couple. Make sure to connect with us on social media after today. We have our group Social Media Masterminds on Facebook. Definitely recommend joining. Lots of great conversation there and other people to talk with about what we do. Today's nonprofit spotlight is Mom's Mental Health Initiative. They are a bridge to help with perinatal for birthing people, mental health advocacy as far as pregnancy and postpartum depression. They're really great. They're in the back of the room. Give a shout out to Mom's Mental Health after and find out some more about their resources. Make sure to connect with them too at their socials on the bottom. Our sponsors this morning. So as we mentioned, Dream Bank. So we're here at the lovely Dream Bank. We also have sales here. And we have Alex and Livewell Video. Faith is here doing our live stream. Thank you, Faith. And thank you to all of our fabulous sponsors for making this a reality. Dream Bank. So Andy's here. Andy is going to talk a little more about Dream Bank.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Andy with the glasses. Everyone's asking me, like, new glasses? No, I usually was just feeling a little lazy this morning. And I don't know. Usually when the sun's shining, I'm like, I got to wear sunglasses in the car, so I usually forgo the glasses. Anyway, enough about me. Shout out to Sal's, though, for let's give it up to Sal's. I know they're going to talk in a second here. Avocado toast. I think I've shared it with everyone just because I'm so excited about it, but I got Sal's last night for dinner. They got a wonderful one-topping large carryout deal. Yeah, is it all the locations, my Sal's people? Yeah, all the locations. Tuesday, one-topping carryout deal for I think like 16 or 17 bucks. So my son and I absolutely love crushing Sal's on a Tuesday, so I'm doubling up today. Sausage. Yep. So anyway, a little bit about Dream Bank, though. I see a lot of familiar faces. Thanks so much for coming back. For those of you who aren't familiar about who we are and what we do and why we exist, love to take a couple minutes and share with you. So here at American Family Insurance, we believe that communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams. And that's why this place was created just over 11 years ago. It's an inspirational and community destination and virtual experience that's dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, to overcome obstacles, and to stay motivated. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we just wrapped up some wonderful programming the month of February, Black History Month programming. There was a great boot camp on personal finances run by a company called Rich and Regular out of Atlanta, Georgia. And then we segued right into March, which happens to be Women's History Month as well. So some great programs that are tailored to those specific culturally relevant historical months and moments throughout the year. So highly encourage you all to check that out on our website, which is amfam.com/dreambank. In addition to that, though, when we're not utilizing this wonderful space, we offer it up to the community for free of charge as well. So groups such as Social Media Breakfast Madison can take advantage of that. But maybe it's your own office. Maybe you sit on a board. Maybe you're just looking for a staff retreat and offsite. Go ahead and talk to myself or my coworker, Jenna. She's right there in the sweater at the back. Everyone stare at Jenna for 1 second. We'd be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have about the space once we're done here. In addition to that, there's a drop-in co-working space too. So we're open Tuesday through Thursday right now, 9 to 5. Folks can come in throughout the day and have a quietish place to work. It's first come, first serve. But yeah, it's we always have complimentary coffee, water, tea, and Wi-Fi on site. So if you live on the west side, meeting a client who lives on the east side, kind of need that central location or just a place to get some work done, a physical location to work on your dreams, if you will. That is what that space is meant to embody and represent. And then all the way in the back of the space, we have a very robust and interactive exhibit. It's all rooted in positive psychology, meant to embody some of the beliefs and values of the company. Right now, the theme is building your dream. So a lot of really cool design thinking concepts and principles built into that. And with that, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it back. There you are.
Oh boy. Sorry, Faith. Okay. Well, that was Andy. Always nice to see Andy. Another one of our sponsors is Sales. So Sales is going to talk to you a bit about the services they offer. And this is not coming up to do so.
All right, good morning. My name is Adriana. I'm with Sal's. I've got my friend Tina in the back. She is our catering director. I'm not really a speaker at all, so I'll keep this super short. We have hidden one $10 gift card under a seat. You may want to shuffle. I'm not seeing a person in the seat that we left it in. So if you really want a gift basket, I would recommend maybe looking around a little bit. It's underneath the chair. While we're looking for that gift card, if you haven't heard of Sal's before, we are a pizza shop located just across the street. We do pizzas. We're sort of venturing into pastas. We do wholesale frozen pizzas and pastas, and of course catering. Have we found that gift card yet? Do we need a hint? It's on this side of the room on the first half. Second row. It's not?
Oh, I didn't look at my own.
Should be under the chair. All right, so you will have to come in to Sal's Monona. You also get a frozen pie, one of our bags of frozen pasta, and a t-shirt with that. So congrats. It's lovely being here, and I'll pass this on.
Give a big round of applause for Sales, guys. So sorry. All right. And speaking of looking under your chairs, there's yet another thing under a chair. We work with Yola's. They have graciously given us $10 gift cards for a social media breakfast. So one lucky person today also has a gift card for Yola's for $10 underneath their chair. So if you didn't check under your chair, now is the time. There we go. And there's our winner. Big thanks again to Yola's for providing those gift cards for us. We'll get with you for some details on that. Well, without further ado, our speaker is here today, Jamie Gale is going to talk to you about her expertise. Give her a big round of applause.
I don't need that. Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm going to just switch my slide here. All right. I'm really looking forward to talking to you about podcasting. This talk is called Podcast is the New Blog, and we're going to talk all about expanding your reach and connection through podcasting. The key takeaways that I'm expecting and hoping that you'll take away from our talk today are what podcasting can do for your company. And there are fundamentals that you'll need to take your podcast from idea to published. And so we're going to kind of just talk over an overview of each of those fundamentals. And then in each of those, there's some key decisions that you'll need to make. So get on your thinking hats because you'll need to make some key decisions for this podcast that you're going to hopefully launch after our talk today. And then it's Social Media Breakfast Madison. So we'll talk about the best ways to use your podcast content on social media. But first, I would love to know who is in the audience. So I'm assuming I know the answer to this, but raise your hand if you have ever listened to a podcast. Okay, that's exactly what I thought. All right, now raise your hand if you have listened to a podcast in the past month. Okay, and how about the past week? And who listened to a podcast before they even arrived here today? Okay, awesome. What are you listening to? What is it?
Family Secrets.
Family Secrets. I don't know that one.
Inner Rebel.
Inner Rebel. Okay. What else?
Pod Save America.
Pod Save America. All right. What else?
Freaking Out.
What is it?
Freaking Out.
Greeking Out. Oh, cool. I don't know that one.
Juicy Scoop.
Juicy Scoop. Okay. I don't know that one, but I have a feeling I know what it is.
What's about Bravo?
Bravo. Yeah, that's okay. What else? Anybody else? NPR. Okay. Yeah, I've got my morning stack of news podcasts that I listen to while I get ready every morning. So, and then what speed do you listen on? 1.5. It depends. Anybody listen at 2.0 speed? Awesome. Well, you are in good company, all of you in this room who have listened to podcasts, because podcast listenership is rapidly on the rise. So we all know that, right? Anecdotally, more and more of our conversations are starting with oh, I heard on this podcast. We aren't lying anymore and saying we read it in an article. We're just admitting that we heard it on a podcast, and that's across the board. So according to the Pew Research Center, terrestrial radio, like AM, FM radio, that listenership has stayed really stable over the past 10 years. It's been about, in any given week, over 80% of Americans over the age of 12 have listened to terrestrial radio, which that sounds high to me, but that is a lot, right? Over that same amount of time in the 10 years, podcast listenership has really gone up so much. In 2013, it was that 7% of Americans would have listened to a podcast in that week, in the given week that they were asked. And in 2023, that number was 31%. So that's a huge jump in a relatively short amount of time. And that number is just going to continue to go up and up and up. And the same question in the given month was 42%. So that's an enormous amount of podcast listenership. According to Buzzsprout, which is a podcast hosting platform, there are 90 million weekly listeners of podcasts. And of those 90 million listeners, 66% of those listeners have college degrees and have an average household income of $75,000 or more. So there's a lot of purchasing power in podcast listenerships. This was an interesting fact. It said how many podcasts the average listener tunes into per week. Any guesses? 5, 4, 7, 3, 12. So it's 8. So that was interesting, right? You don't have to become the one podcast someone listens to. You just kind of got to be one of the 8. So I thought that was really interesting. Who am I? I am Jamie Gale. I'm an entrepreneur and educator. I've lived in Madison for over 20 years. I love it here. I also am a mom of 3 teenagers, so that's a big, important part of my identity. But I am a business owner. I own a program agency, and there I work with many other amazing entrepreneurs in the area and organizations to develop and operate programs. So I kind of have two main categories that I create programs in. One is why I'm talking here today. I create programs for entrepreneurs and for leaders, and one of those offerings is my podcast network, which is called Lit Path Studios. That is about a year old, and we'll chat more about that in a minute. But I also host two of the podcasts that are on the network, a leadership podcast called Follow the Leaders, and one about youth well-being called the In It for Youth podcast. Because the other part of my business that I create programming for is around children and families. So I own a kids yoga company called Little Ohm Big Ohm. We've done programming right here at Dream Bank. I also am the co-director of a creative arts summer camp and after school enrichment program called Creative Soul Camp. And I also create trainings for people who work with kids. So I have a kids yoga teacher training called Meet Me in Child's Pose, and a camp counselor training called the Star Counselor. We just had our first weekend last weekend. It was so fun. It was really, really fun. And then I have a personal and professional development group for moms that own businesses called Boss Mama, where I do mentorship for moms that want to start and grow businesses. And we have networks where people can connect and get together. So Lit Path Studios I'm here to say, like, anybody can have a podcast. A year ago, a colleague asked me if I could help her start a podcast. I have been a huge podcast nerd for many, many years, but never knew anything about the production side. And so but I do have an attitude that I can figure it out. And so I said yes, and I was like, I'm going to start this network, and we host personal and professional development podcasts, including one with one of our audience members, Katie Myers, who hosts the Off the Beaten Career Path podcast. Check it out. And so it's been a really wonderful journey. It has changed my business, and I believe that it can change your business as well. So what can a podcast do for your business? There's really four. I was thinking about it, and I was breaking it down into four main areas. You can showcase, connect, extend, and sell. So we're going to dig into those topics. Please interrupt me at any time if you have any questions or want to chime in with some additional information. I'm all ears. So you, as the business owner, or you working for a company, have so much knowledge about your industry and about your business and about your team and about your experience and about your customers. And having a podcast as one of your business offerings is another way to communicate, and I believe communicate really richly and deeply about your industry and about your work experience in a really long form, dynamic format. So you are establishing yourself as an expert. Just because you put your knowledge out there, you already are an expert in what you're doing. And having a podcast allows you to really showcase that. And even if you are learning, you're new in business, you can showcase your learning journey in there. You're really establishing yourself as an expert and showcasing what you do know. And in your business, when you're delivering your services, you are yourself, and you get to be yourself on a podcast as well. And so you're really getting to show your customer base, your potential customer base, your colleagues, your collaborators, who you are in a long form content through a podcast, and really show what you're actually like. It does take some practice, when you're first getting started, to learn to loosen up on the mic and be yourself. But once you kind of lean into that, you can really show your sense of humor. And along those lines, you're really getting to show your personality. What is going to set your company, your business, your offerings apart from the other people in your industry? It's you. It's your personality. And so you're allowing these customers to get to know you in kind of like a lurker way, right? Like they get to really, it sounds worse than it is, but they really do get to observe you, what feels like up close, you're in their ears, but without needing to set up that one-on-one call. Sometimes that's the barrier between somebody reaching out to you to ask about your services, is they don't feel like they really know you that well yet. One of the hosts on the network was talking about how she has been approached many times by people who have been following her on social media for years, all her posts, all of her things that she puts out there. And they didn't reach out to her for her services until they listened to her podcast. They said, oh, I've been following you for years, but now I listened to a few episodes of your podcast. I'm ready to set up that meeting. So that was a really cool result. And that was pretty early on in her podcasting. So that was really, really cool. You're showing people what working with you is like. You're really showcasing that. And you're showing behind the curtain of your personality. So at the end of the day, this is really just getting people into the know, like, trust pipeline, right? That we're all looking to get our customers into. They really get to know you. They hopefully like you as they hear more of the things that you say and watch your working style, and then they're ready to trust you and become your customer or work with you or your colleague or your team member, that kind of thing. All right, so connect. This to me is the gold. We are all so busy, and when you're recording a podcast episode, you are taking that time to connect in long form content. You're sitting down with somebody that you may have not otherwise made time for in your schedule, or who wouldn't have made time for in their schedule, for a conversation about your work and your interests and your life. And that connection is so incredibly rich. I'm standing here today because of that exact situation. For my Follow the Leaders podcast, I was so lucky to interview Liz Boyd, the president of Social Media Breakfast Madison, and we were chatting afterwards, and speaking here became part of the conversation. And so I would hope, I've watched Liz's work for many years through the library. I've obviously been following Social Media Breakfast for a long time, but that connection between the two of us wouldn't have happened except for the podcast interview. So it's recorded. There you are. Hi. It's more than just recording the conversation. It's the communication leading up to it. You're now directly connected with people by email. You have that conversation before and after you hit record. That's really, really important. And likewise, your customers, you get to connect with your listenership. They become your listening community. You want to know what they are listening to. You can ask them for feedback. You can ask them to reach out and get in touch. And so that relationship, those connections it's gold, right? It's business gold. It's really, really beautiful. You also get to collaborate with other people that want to come on your show to showcase their knowledge, right? So they're going to borrow your audience and you're going to borrow their knowledge. And that mutual back scratching situation is really beautiful connection. And then extend. So a few months ago, there was a speaker here at this event, Emma, who was talking about how attention span is just dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. Everybody's on their phones scrolling so fast. And so short form video is the way to handle that, right? And that is so important for business owners to do that. Podcasting is a way to extend people's quote attention span for your ideas and your thoughts. You're in their ears, they're able to multitask, and they're going to consume way more of you if they're listening to your podcast than they would if they're scrolling on Instagram and see a picture or a video or reading a blog. They might skim it, right? But if you get someone to listen to your podcast, let's say your podcast is a half hour long, even at 1.5 speed or 2.5 speed, that's 15 minutes of them listening to you talk about whatever you chose your topic of the episode to be. A few months ago, our LitPath Studios hit over 10,000 downloads, which for us, we're a small network. We just started a year ago. That was big for us. Yeah, thanks. Shout out to the amazing hosts on the network. So I was thinking about that. And even if I did a little quick math, even if the podcast episodes were all only a half hour long, some of them are longer, that's over like 5,000 hours that people were listening to the hosts on the network. If you had said in 1 year that these business owners would get 5,000 minutes of listenership from the audience, that's wild, right? So you can really extend people's attention span. And then sell, right? If you are doing a podcast as a hobby, that's less of an issue, right? But if you are adding a podcast to your business offerings, another way you're communicating with your customer base, your audience, you want to sell. And there's a few ways that you can do that. You can directly sell. So on my podcast, I might record an ad for Boss Mama, for my professional development group, and I will play that ad. I will work that into the audio file before we submit it. You can generate or gather email addresses by offering your listenership a download. Use it as a lead magnet. You can link it in the show notes. You're offering something for free, right? Podcasts, unless it's a paid podcast, are free resources. And so your customers are getting to know you, like you. They might download something that you're offering them. You can directly offer that to them. There's also indirect selling. So through storytelling, you can explain what you're doing in the other areas of your business. You can talk about an experience you had with a customer. You can weave that in, and it might open up your listeners' ideas to the offerings that you have. a few years ago, I came to a talk here. This was actually right before COVID, so 4 years ago. I was watching a speaker, and she was talking about something completely different, but she wove into her speech that, she was at a business doing coaching for their team on, I can't even remember now what it was, but I watched her masterfully weave in the story about this coaching service that she offers into her example. And that made a mental note that this is a service this woman does. She wasn't here talking about that. You can do the same thing on your podcast. And that can just really demonstrate what you have. And somebody might be more likely to click through in your show notes or follow you on social media and become your customer in that way. And then you can also use your podcast to demonstrate what it is you actually are selling. So if you are a coach of some sort, or you help do branding for a company, you could invite a listener onto your podcast and offer them that service at no cost to them, as long as they're willing to let you record it and publish it. And you can demonstrate right there. You provide them this coaching or this advising, and that is so interesting to listen to. If you're an entrepreneur, to listen to another company go through a branding process, and you get to see how the podcast host does that service. And so you might, first of all, you're getting free advice because you're listening to see how it goes, but you might be then more likely to go buy from or sign up with that person because you know more than just what their website looks like. You have seen or heard, I guess, their work in action. So there are fundamentals that, let's pretend I've sold you. You're like, okay, yes, I need a podcast for my business, Jamie. There's some fundamentals that you'll need to kind of work through to get from idea to publication. And then there's, like I mentioned, key decisions along the way. So we have our planning process. This is the part that most people want to skip. They want to, right? They want to get on the mic. They're ready. They'll go right to ordering the microphone. But if you really take the time to plan really thoughtfully, you can get into the ears that you want to get into, and you can keep them listening. And then recording, this is me with a picture of me recording a podcast a few weeks ago. Then there's editing and publication. We'll talk through all these. And then promoting the episode. So as you can see, there's a graphic from the episode I recorded with Liz. And I use this to help get the word out about that episode. All right. So planning. The first decision you'll want to make when you're planning your podcast is, what format do you want it to be? Do you want it to be an audio only podcast? Do you want it to be a full video podcast? Or do you want it to be a hybrid where the full episode is published in audio form, and you want to use perhaps video clips from the recording for promotion and like reels and TikToks or screen grabs for posts? We at the Path Studios do the last option, the hybrid. Our full episodes are published in audio format, which means that as far as editing goes, we only have to edit the audio version for the full length. And then we can grab videos. We use an online recording platform that makes it super easy to do, which is really nice. There's a lot of great resources out there. We use Riverside, but there's many options out there. And there's even some like AI clip suggestions of the videos that the platform will give. They're good starting places. You gotta finesse them after that and figure out what you want to post. But it makes it really easy to grab clips and to promote on social media. But that's your decision. That's completely up to you whether you want audio, video, or a mix. And then the next questions are when and where. So the question of when is, how often are you going to drop episodes? So it's my advice that you don't overpromise. So when you're starting, especially when it's part of your business, this isn't your full-time thing is podcasting, you're adding it to your existing business. A bi-weekly schedule every other week is great because it's a lot, it's still, you got to keep the content coming, but you're not promising weekly, and then your listeners are expecting a weekly drop and then they don't get it. So that's a decision to make. And then where are you going to be recording, virtually or in person? So that's a decision that you want. If you're recording with guests, that's a decision that you'll need to make. And then you'll need to assess your circumstances. And so this is a really important part that people often skip, is figuring out how much time do you actually have to devote to your podcast. That will affect, obviously, the when question. Maybe it's monthly that you start, but how much time do you have for the entire podcasting process. And then also, how much money do you have to put into it? You can do it for free. You can record on Zoom, download, keep your episodes under 40 minutes so you don't even need a paid Zoom account, download your audio from there, publish on a free platform, and use social media to promote. But just like anything, what you put in is what you get out. And so if you have a budget to put into equipment, recording, app marketing, all of that, it's going to yield results. But it's really important to identify how much you have to start. And then often overlooked is support. So I always ask people when I'm helping them start a podcast or any sort of business project, how much support do you have? Who in your camp is going to be the cheerleader who's going to help you through those sticking point moments, right? And who is going to say, well, what are you going to do if nobody listens? We don't need that. You've already decided to start a podcast. You'll figure that part out as you go. You want to just evaluate who is going to be a cheerleader for you. That's an important part of that assessment. And then I always encourage people to figure out, what are you selling? And what I mean by this is, if you are selling your business offerings, then that is your focus. Your focus is on the things I was talking about before. Really showcasing your knowledge, making connections, extending people's listening time, and then making sure that you're mentioning your products. If what you want to sell is ad space, then your advertisers that is what you're selling. You're selling ad space. And so all the decisions that you make for your podcast need to be taking into account your potential advertisers and what their interests and needs are. So it's really important to differentiate that. Those are different goals, but it's an important decision to make. And of course, branding. So the brand plan, are you going to tie your podcast directly to your business name? Or are you going to come up with some other name so that you can hopefully get people who aren't necessarily already bought into your brand? Being thoughtful about making your podcast name something that's identifiable, easily searchable. There are a lot of podcasts that are started and then not continued. And so this is something that I get asked a lot is, what if there's a podcast that somebody already had chosen that name? And my advice is that it might be okay. It might be okay to use a podcast that already has a name. If it's a dormant podcast, meaning that they're not using it anymore, it's not already tied to a major celebrity, because you're never going to stick out in that way, or it's not already one of the top podcasts, or if it's in a totally different podcast category. So there's just some decisions to make, but remembering that people are searching quickly and they are going to type it in wrong. They're going to hear about it and then type it in wrong. So thinking what will come up, what is something that's easily searchable. Then we've got to talk about cover art. So what I see sometimes is that people put a lot of detail into their cover art, forgetting that for the most part, people are seeing them in a tiny, tiny little space on their phone. It's one of the many podcasts in the feed. So making sure that your cover art is very clear. You do want something eye-popping, and you will be using it on social media to promote your episodes if you're promoting your episodes. So you want it to be appealing, but something that's identifiable in tiny, tiny little format when people don't have their glasses on. And then music, that's another thing. Not everybody uses podcast music for intros and outros, but it really does, in my opinion, make the podcast sound much more professional. There's so much music out there that's available. You can, of course, invest in custom music, and then you own that music to put on. Otherwise, there's lots of low-cost or no-cost options online. You just want to make sure that it's something that's royalty-free and you have a commercial license to use it. So, and it can really set the tone, the vibe, the tone for your podcast. And then your descriptions, that's sort of the last part of the branding plan. You want to be thoughtful about making sure that someone can really understand what your podcast is about. It's not the place for poetry in the little tiny description at the top of the platform. You want something that's very clear that shows what it's about. You can go into more detail on social media, but on the podcast platform, you want it to be really clear. And then I always recommend that hosts have a one-sentence answer for what is your podcast about. So you want to be able to, oh, really? You have a podcast? What's it about? And be ready with a very quick, brief, oh, it's about leadership. It's about youth well-being. It's about unique career paths, whatever that is. So those are some key decisions in the planning process. All right, then you need to think about physical equipment. So you need a microphone, right? You need headphones. Those are the two pieces and something to record on. So your computer or a recording device. And those are the ways that you will capture the audio file. So either your computer or a digital audio workspace. That's how you will capture the actual recorded file. And then you'll need a physical space to record. No surprise, you need somewhere that is quiet, that without distractions. And nowadays there's such amazing editing software that you really don't need like a padded, unless you're going for a highly produced podcast where sound is the offering. If you're adding a podcast to your business, a quiet space at work will be enough, in my opinion, because the editing software is so great to remove background noise, to level the audio, all of that. And then somewhere to store the audio file. So that might just be your online platform, or it could be a Google Drive. All right, editing and publication. So to edit or not to edit? That is the question. Lots of people don't edit. They grab the audio file and they put it up there, and that's that. And if that is what you have capacity for, go for it. I personally like an edited show when I'm listening, and so that is something that I'm continuing to build my skills in and our team's skills in, is in getting better and better at editing. We all have filler words when we talk. Everybody. And so being able to remove those for me is important, and something that I think makes the audio much more listenable. There's really great software out there. I use Hindenburg. We use Hindenburg right now, but GarageBand is a free option. If you have a Mac, there's other free options that I've tinkered around with, but I really like Hindenburg for removing background noise, if you record in separate tracks, you can make sure that the volume is the same between the speakers. If someone coughs while the other person's talking, you can remove that other sound, you can remove the coughing. A lot of times, especially if you're recording virtually, people will kind of talk over each other a little bit because of just technology. And so you can do a little podcast magic and scoot the voices a little bit apart. And so it makes it sound like they're responding to each other. I think those things really make your podcast sound much more listenable and professional. So you can also shorten word gaps using the software. I use Descript for removing filler words and shortening word gaps. It's really snazzy. I'm in the way here, but it makes a transcription of your audio file, and then you can edit the transcript, and it edits the audio file. It's really, really, really nice. It's called Descript. And it's very handy. You can edit video in this way, but since we just do full audio podcast, I just do the audio. It's really, really nice. It's really, really nice. With a click of a button, it can reduce you can say, shorten any word gap that's more than, a second long to 1 second. And so click, done. It's really nice. You do need to kind of go back through it and make sure that it, there's a little bit of art to it, but it's a wonderful, wonderful tool. And then you'll need to choose and of course, editing for content. If you record an hour-long conversation, you want a 45-minute podcast, you got to pick and choose what areas of the conversation are going to come out. And again, I use Descript for that. Then you'll need to choose a hosting platform. There's many, most are free. The differences are really the analytics that you get on the back end. But there's lots of great options. We use Anchor. It's owned by Spotify. It's great. That will produce an RSS feed, which is the distribution URL. You can think about it that way. And so you can take that RSS feed and put it into many different platforms. So you can connect your RSS feed to websites. You can distribute it. You can put it in other podcast platforms, and that can push out to all the many apps that we use to listen to podcasts. Any questions about that? That was a lot, I know. No? Okay. And then we're at Social Media Breakfast Madison. So of course, we're going to talk about social media. There are so many ways that you can promote your episode, promote your podcast, and in turn promote your business using the content that you create for your podcast on social media. So I just dumped a list and we'll walk through this, but this is not a finite list. There are so many ways that you can get creative with the content that you created for your podcast to promote it. So you can create a static graphic previewing the episode, dropping tomorrow an episode, with Liz. I'm just going to keep coming back to you. You can then, of course, create a static graphic announcing that the episode is published. You can create an audiogram an audio clip from the podcast on a static graphic. So an audiogram is just a reel or a TikTok, a video format that has a picture with the audio from your podcast. So even if you don't record any video from your podcast, you can still use it to make reels and TikToks. They don't perform as well as actual video of the people, but it's still another way that you can use content. Or let's say during that part, somebody was making a weird face and you really love the content from that section, you can still use it in video form, just with a static graphic. If you own a flower shop and you have a podcast talking about the different types of flowers, you could use B-roll of you in your flower shop and take a clip from the podcast and put that over the video. And now you have another use of another clip from the podcast that is going to really, again, showcase what you're offering. We've already kind of talked about this, but you can take an actual video clip, either of one speaker at a time, if you're a solo podcast, just of yourself, or there's many different layouts that you can choose, especially on these platforms where the speakers are placed over each other. You can add captions, you can add your logo right in these platforms, and that becomes a way to promote the episode. You can have a static graphic with a quote from the episode. You can, once a month, you can go back, look at all the episodes that you put out and pick something from the past. That's another thing, is this becomes evergreen content that you can refer to, you can send clients to, you can mention a past episode in a new episode. You're going to be gaining listeners, hopefully, all the time. And so they wouldn't have heard your first episodes. And so even though you might cringe listening to your very first ones because you've gotten a lot better at it over time, you can refer back to one of your old episodes. And so you can also do the same thing on social media. You can hop on your stories and record a face-to-camera reel or on your stories, referencing a mic drop moment from that you're still thinking about. You can show something that you're doing that was a takeaway from that episode. These are all the same things that you would do on any social media when you're promoting anything, but you can use that same exact recording to do all of these things. And then there's the guests. So this is not only do you create these connections that I was referencing before, but you are able to borrow their audiences if they agree to share the episode on their platforms or with their customer base. So a lot of times they are proud of, they're getting to talk about their business offerings or their expertise or their experience. People like to talk. And so if you can ask them to please, you have to ask them, but please share this on your social media, or please send this out to your newsletter list. And so if you can include a headshot of theirs or a video clip, they're more likely to share it because it just feels more personal to them. And make sure that you're tagging your guests in all of your posts, in your stories, so they can reshare. So I'm sure you can think of many other ways that you can use it, but this is hopefully a good starter list for how you can repurpose the content that you've already recorded. We're always looking for new content, right? In many ways over time. So it doesn't even always have to be the week that you're promoting. Use it in the future as well. So I'm really not wanting to knock on blogging. There's a very big need for it. It serves a wonderful purpose. But I believe that if you have limited time and energy and money and all of that, which we all do, right? That podcasting, if you're deciding between them, podcasting is the place to put your time, energy, and resources. So I believe that it helps your traffic become much warmer. For all the reasons that I mentioned, they already are in the know, like, trust pipeline. The conversions are going to be higher because of all the things that we talked about. Consumers are already multitasking, like we've talked about. They're doing laundry, they're washing dishes, they're on a walk, they're driving. So use that time. Everybody's looking to reduce their screen time, right? And so this is I guess technically screen time, but you're in their ears. They're able to do other things. And so it's a way to capture their attention while they're doing other things, and they feel more productive. And like we mentioned, the attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. So extend the amount of time that your customers are listening to you and learning from you or your colleagues. And you get to showcase your authentic voice, literally. You know, you're using your authentic voice as something we all strive to achieve in the things that we're putting out there outside of our actual work when we're communicating about our business. And so podcasting, I believe, is the best way to do that. So, and of course, you can have the best of both worlds. You can take your transcript from your podcast, toss it into ChatGPT, ask it to make a few blog posts out of it, fine tune it, post it up, and there's another way to repurpose your content. So I would love to connect with you. I'm always looking to get to know other people in the community. So if you want to bounce an idea off of me, or you want to be a guest on one of the shows on the network, we're always looking for great businesses and people from the community to come on and share their stories on our shows. If you want help with your podcast, or you just want to get to know me, I have my contact at the QR code there and listed below, and I would love to connect with you at any point and hear what you're up to. So thank you so much for joining me. I would love to open the floor to any questions that you have, or if you have something to add to one of these topics, I'm all ears.
I just want to say that being a host on your podcast network, I have no skills whatsoever, and I don't know that Jamie believes I could do it at every turn, but she really worked with me on it and helped me figure out how to make it work. So if you don't let the technology scare you, if you're interested in it.
Thank you, Katie. I knew you could do it. But yeah, anybody, truly, the tech is learnable, all very learnable. Yes.
Can you talk about the difference between like working with like a studio or a group
Yeah.
like you have versus like just being a person with a podcast?
Yes, I can. So really, there's not a wrong way to go. If you already have an audience that's going to be ready to listen, then you may not need to be with a group. The benefits of working with other business owners are just that you are connected to each other. You can learn from each other. You can, just that. There are profit sharing arrangements if there were to be paid advertising that networks often do. They help with promotion, like for LitPath Studios. If Katie has a podcast episode drop, she's promoting it to her audience, and then we're also promoting it to our audience. So it becomes like a hub for people to learn about new podcasts and get more exposure, I guess is the best way I could say that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
How do you accommodate for those that have hearing issues?
So there's really exciting news in this department. The Apple Podcasts just changed their platform to have transcription be built into every episode now, which is really great. So obviously on social media, you can add captions to every thing that you put out there, but the podcast platforms themselves are starting to incorporate that in. You also could publish your transcripts on your website or in your show notes. And so that's another way to accommodate for that. Yeah.
From the planning process to the execution to advertising the podcast episodes, about how many hours would you spend per podcast episode?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm going to answer that as though you're already up and running, because I would say that the beginning stages is obviously much longer. Depending on the length of the episode, because that's what's going to impact the editing, I would say 2 to 3 hours start to finish. So, but the coordinating with the guest, recording the episode, obviously, and then editing and promotion. Yeah, I would say 2 to 3 hours per episode. Yeah.
Kind of on that same question. Before launching, how far out do you plan, like a few episodes, or have a few episodes recorded before you launch?
Yeah, so that's also a great question. So as far as how far in advance do you plan? Is that what you said first?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you are ready to like dive in and start working on this on a regular basis, 2 months is what I'm typically seeing that people take from like, okay, I want to start a podcast to the trailer and the first episodes are launched. That's typically, or at least the trailer. It's recommended to drop with at least 2 to 3 episodes so that your people are, attention spans are short, right? So people are going to listen quickly to a few episodes. So that's what's recommended. the more you can bank, the better, but it is, it just depends on how much time you obviously have to devote to it. But yeah, a trailer plus 2 to 3 episodes is what's recommended.
Once you're up and running, do you recommend having a couple episodes already recorded?
If you can. It depends on your, sometimes it kind of goes in, for me personally, it goes in waves. So like right now I have a lot of episodes banked for both shows. So that eases things up. But in a few weeks, I'm gonna be like, okay, I better start scheduling more interviews for that. So it just depends on your workflow. Some people are like, nope, I'm gonna record 1 episode at a time and publish it. It just sort of depends on how much infrastructure you have to like produce them then from there. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have you ever done a podcast interview, listened back and decided that it was not a good fit for your audience? And
Absolutely.
If so, what do you do at that point?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yes, I have. And for our shows on the network, the guests sign a guest agreement before they come on, one point of which is acknowledging that we may not use the episode. So it depends on your relationship with that person. Sometimes they also know that it's not going to be usable, and you can kind of just connect with them in that way. Sometimes it's a sound issue that it's just truly no podcast magic is going to fix the sound. And so you could reach out to them and say, hey, if you want to re-record, you can do that. What'd you say?
With these notes.
With these notes, yes, exactly. Or sometimes, or you can just send the note and say, hey, it's not the right fit for the show right now, but I'll let you know if I publish it in the future. So the answer is yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you talk about marketing or how you grow your audience, whether it's
Yeah.
organically or paid?
Organically. So for right now, we are doing all organic. You certainly can do paid advertising just like you can for any business venture. But it does tend to grow. If you put some energy into, especially asking your guests to share the episode, that's where we see big bumps. Certainly if you have a guest on who's invested in sharing the episode, that episode is going to perform well, making sure that you're inviting people to follow the show after. So that for us, that's how it has grown. And I will say that even though we are a small network, the impact has been much bigger than just the number of downloads. I know there was a speaker in the past who spoke at this event, I think it was during COVID, who said that even just a very small amount of listeners makes a big impact for her business. I would say that's very true. So, you don't, unless your goal is to sell to the advertisers, like when I was talking about what are you selling? You need big numbers for that. Like they pay a small amount of money per 1,000 downloads per episode. So when you're adding it to a small business, the focus should be on really nurturing your listenership, even if it is small to start. All right. Well, thank you so much. Let me know. I want to hear about your podcast that you started. Oh, that's it. Yeah. That was my last slide. Was thank you.
Oh, I need to go to our slides.
Oh, you're right. Sorry. Sorry, Ellen.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. Let's be friends. You could also become a speaker. So we would love hearing your, proposed topics for an SMBMad. Please find us online, scan the QR code, volunteer, be a blog writer, maybe a podcaster for us, facilitate our Facebook group, sponsor an event. You bring the food. We'll help share your business across Madison. We can do shout outs to local nonprofits too. Once again, like Mom's Mental Health Initiative, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. And apply for a scholarship. If you can't afford that conference and you want to go to it, your company won't fund it, ask us for help and make sure to apply online today. Our April 17th event will be Building Better Content Calendars, How to Stop the Scroll and Convey More Messages. That'll be with Sarah Curry and Brett. Make sure to join us April 17th at the same great location. We had our winner this morning. Amelia will be coming around to snap your photo if you're okay with that. Thank you so much for participating. It's very fun to have a chair moment this morning with everybody. And thanks again to Yola's for generously providing that gift card. I think that's it. I think that's it for this morning. Thank you so much for being here and supporting SMB Mad and our local speakers.